Hello and welcome to this webinar on navigating timetabling season, your pre-timetabling checklist. If you are newish to timetabling or you're working in a school where the processes don't yet feel ironclad, the purpose of this session is to reassure you. I've trained a lot of timetablers over the journey and I've built a lot of timetables, and I'm often asked for advice when someone is starting out in the role. I always offer two pieces of advice. The first is general, and that is, it will all be okay. I have a close friend who is an international jet pilot, and we have, would you believe, compared notes on the two roles. And he said that he believes the two jobs are very similar in the sense that if you stick to the process and don't deviate off course, everything will be fine. Once you start to make decisions that aren't documented, that's when things can go wrong. So map out a process, stick to it, and everything will be okay. And just as an aside, if you get to the 20th of December and you've run out of time and things are going badly, you feel like the walls are caving in, companies like ours and Timetabling Solutions and a handful of others can generate timetables very quickly. So it will be okay. Now, I promise that is not an ad. We do not want to necessarily build timetables. We genuinely hold the view that timetables are best constructed internally. No one knows your school like you do, and the best timetable you ever have will be one that's built internally. But just to reassure you, if you get to a point where things aren't going well, there is always a way to get things back on track. Number two is more specific, and I think right now it might be a little bit more helpful. Plan your white weeks. Set aside 3 consecutive weeks, now maybe 4 if you're brand new to timetabling, but set aside some consecutive weeks where absolutely nothing is allowed to change. No staffing changes, no student preference changes, no new constraints, no extra composite classes, nothing can change. Decide on those weeks with your calendar in hand, ensuring they suit you, leadership, your teachers, and your students. Make sure all your data, so student selections, staffing, constraints, is finalized before those white weeks begin. And then during those white weeks, focus solely on building version 1 of the timetable. Once version 1 exists, any late changes become tweaks, not crises, and you'll always have a working timetable to fall back on. Worst case scenario, if someone resigns, you'll do your best to tweak loads to suit the best candidate, but if you absolutely have to, you can just hire for the load. You will be amazed at the feeling of calm that arrives once version 1 is finished. After that, student subject changes, no worries, slot them in. Staffing changes, we will try. If they don't fit, we still have a stable timetable. Okay, now let's look at the 6 key tasks before you start solving your grid. Our assumption here is that student preferences are in, and ideally, learning leaders have submitted their dream team staffing preferences. It's not absolutely essential, but if they have submitted their dream team staffing preferences, the gap between the preferences coming in and the day that you can start timetabling will shrink. Let's have a quick glance at this checklist. Firstly, you're going to need to convert your form reports, that is your student subject selection submissions, to a preferences table so that leadership can see real tallies data. And you can start seeing who you might need to chat to about subjects they've selected that aren't running and the like. That's a beautiful segue into number 2, executive decisions. This is your tally screen, and if you're using school data, it's live. You don't need to rely on Excel exports or anything like that. As you change student selections, leadership can see those numbers update, or more pertinently, as students submit their forms late, if you've left the forms open, then tallies will update. At the same time that leadership are deciding how many classes will run in each subject, you can use the student selections table to show you at a glance who you need to meet with about subjects that aren't running or any other issues that arise. Once step 2 and 3 have been knocked over, you can tweak your planner grid with real data. And what I mean by that is you'll know exactly how many classes are scheduled to run in each subject, and at the press of a button, you can update class numbers in the planner grid. Staff the grid. As we said earlier, if learning leaders have already given their dream team staffing, this should be a very quick process. And by now, it's probably been handed over to the Director of Staffing to tweak allocations and balance loads. And step 6 is send preferences data to SFX files. As you'll all know, the SFX is where you will solve grids. This means basically creating lines with classes on them, and students will be allocated to those classes. There is a step 7. It's very cool. It is the future, but we are going to make you hang around and watch the whole video to see what is in store for Matrix Gold customers. If you'd like to know what the future looks like, hang around. Let's start with converting your form reports to a preferences table. We have a video to explain how to accomplish most of these processes, and this first one is no exception. For that reason, we're not going to go into a great amount of detail here today, but let's take a helicopter view of what this is all about. All subject selection submissions live in a form report. They must be converted into a preferences table so that tallies can be generated and leadership can see real numbers. As you might have guessed, there's an app for that. In the hub, which can be found at app.schooldata.com.au, open the Form to Preferences import down here. And please be aware that we are adding stacks and stacks of new apps here each week, and so the ordering and placement of apps on this screen may change. Now, before we go too far, I should point out that in order to use this app, you will need to export your subject selection form report. Like pretty much any page in the site, you can do this by clicking the 3 dots and pressing export. You can save this to a folder, or you can just leave it in your downloads if you're just going to use this once. Back to the Form to Preferences import app, click here to select your form report CSV, and you'll notice that the helpful app asks you to select your student code column, and it's had a guess. Scroll down and it asks you to nominate the fields that correspond to live preference columns. I'll select live pref 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to leave 6, 7, and 8 just for the purposes of this demo. Down here it says select your reserve preference columns, and I'll scroll down and select live pref 6, 7, and 8 just to show you that it actually removed live prefs 1 to 5 from this list because I used them up here in the live preferences column selector. Scroll down, read the summary to make sure that everything looks right. Press convert and download preferences CSV. Notice how it downloads the CSV to your downloads folder. Scroll down again and you will get a conversion summary. You now have a CSV that can be imported directly into the subject selection preferences import table. This preferences import data feeds directly into your tally screens, and so executive or leadership can log into the site and make executive decisions based on real student submission data about how many classes should run in each subject. Let's take a look. Under the SS tile, I'm going to press Subject Selections Report. This total column shows you how many students have selected this subject as a live preference. The maximum class number comes directly from your master subjects table, and the auto classes figure is calculated from these two numbers. If you're happy with the auto calculated value, you can simply leave the manual classes blank and the final value will be the same as the value. If, however, you want to override the auto value, simply type a number in this box and that will become your new class's final value. Now, for the sake of this demonstration, we have typed 0 into this row here. But the site is telling us that 14 students still have this as a live preference. More on this soon. Just one final cool feature of this page. Over here on the right, you can see the year levels of the students who have selected each subject. So you can basically see how many students are accelerating into each subject. Now, once leadership have had a chance to make their executive decisions, It's time to chat to students about subjects that aren't running. To do this, you'll need to use the Students Selections table. To do this, the Student Selections table is your best friend. So let's take a look. The Student Selections table is simply a horizontal view of that preferences import that we looked at before. But there are some very powerful interactive features here. Students are automatically sorted by year level, descending, and then by units, also descending. This means next year's Year 12s should be at the top of the list, and students who have got too many subjects, if there are any, will also be at the top of that Year 12 list. Students who don't have enough units would be at the bottom of the Year 12 list. If you don't think you're seeing accurate units, you might need to revisit your master subjects table and specifically the units column. And remember, export, update in Excel, and merge your correct units back into that table. Now, how does this table allow you to be more consultative with students than ever before without adding hours to your weekly workload? Well, the answer lies in the 4 different colored cells that can live over here in the preference columns. White is great. White means it's a live preference and the class is running. Grey simply means it's a reserve. And so yes, you can toggle between white and grey. If this class here becomes a reserve, simply click it and it goes grey. A few more things happen. This student's units drop to 12. The table won't auto sort right now because that would be infuriating if this student suddenly dropped to the bottom of the list. But upon refreshing, they will be at the bottom of the list. Moreover, remember the tallies page we were just looking at? Well, the total live preferences count for this subject will just have dropped by 1. So you don't need to send an update to exec to say, hey, we've got 1 fewer students in this subject. Exec or leadership will see it live on their screen. Of course, clicking the cell again makes it white again, and the student returns to 14 units. Red represents the only problem, if you like. Red means that the class is not running. That is, manual classes and consequently final classes is set to 0. But this student still has this subject as a live preference. So red means live preference but not running. So red really represents your meet with students list. Once you've met with this student and explained that this class is not running, you can simply click it and it will turn a dark blue color. If this school had collected reserves, they would be grey and they'd be listed in these cells over here to the right. In that instance, you might just want to simply click one of those grey cells and allocate the reserve preference to that student. Or you can press the I here and add a new preference for that student. You can either do this with the new entry button, or I prefer to find the last preference for that student, press the insert button, give it a new preference number, find the subject code and press save. While you're meeting these students, you can get started on creating or editing the planner grid with real student preference data. Open the Class Planner wizard, go to Assign Classes, and now over on the right in bold, you will see the total number of live student preferences and a class's final value. These numbers are taken directly from your tallies table. So you could simply type this number here into the planner full year column, or if it's semester based, into the semester 1 and semester 2 boxes, or you can press copy classes final. Just bear in mind that if you bulk copy, check the semester based subjects. If you have an odd number of final classes, the extra class will always be allocated to semester 1, and so you may need to do some manual redistribution. Once that's done, it is time to staff the grid. Simply go to Planner Grid, and if your learning leaders have already provided Dream Team allocations, the Director of Staffing, in most instances, will simply need to review those allocations, tweak them to match whole school priorities, and balance loads. And remember, the best way to balance loads is to use 2 screens. On the second screen, go to Grids and Loads, Planner Loads, And when you make a staffing change in the planner grid, this load screen will automatically scroll to the teacher to whom you just allocated the class. It will add the class into their load at the top, into their load graph at the bottom, and into their stats at bottom right. It will also populate all planner reports tables. These are your FTE reports for teachers and classes. Once you've done these 5 tasks, you are ready to create your student grid. To do this, you're going to need to send your preference data to student files or SFX files. And yes, there's an app for that. And yes, there's a video to accompany the app. The app in question this time is your Preferences to SFX helper. Before you use this, in school data, you're going to need to download via the 3 dots and export to CSV your master subjects table, your master students table, your student preferences table, and your subject selection report table. That should just be about 4 clicks plus navigating to the page. Don't worry about filtering by year level or anything like that. All of that kind of stuff is handled within this app. So simply download them to your downloads folder and access them when you're ready to create your SFX files. Once you've imported these 4 files, step 2 appears and asks you to select the year levels for which you would like to create this SFX. Lots of schools will make year 10 to 12 files, so I'm going to click all 3 of these. Then in step 3, you can decide if this is going to be a 1 or 2 subgrid file. I'm going to press 2, process files, and your SFX is generated. It's that simple. Once again, have a look at the processing summary down below. Most importantly, make sure there were no preferences that were allocated to subjects that don't exist. Okay, you've made it this far. You deserve to see item number 7 on the checklist. You've got your SFX file. It's populated with students, their preferences, and tallies, and you're ready to lodge constraints and solve your grid. If you are a Matrix Gold customer, we would love to schedule a short meeting with you to solve your grid with you. Why might you want to take up this offer? Put simply, the future is pretty much here. You're probably used to 8 or 9 constraint types. Right now, we have 14, and very soon we will have 21. I hope you understand that I can't show you everything in this public video, but what I can tell you is that very soon you will have the ability to balance classes per line, set the number of times the solver runs and how long each solver runs for. And if you haven't yet fallen off your chair, drag to reorder your constraint priorities. As you've probably guessed, there is a lot more around the corner. And so outcomes in the future for students and teachers are only going to improve. And this job is only going to get more manageable and more exciting at the same time. And that covers the journey from raw form reports to a staffed, ready to solve grid, along with a peek at what is coming next. I hope the session has delivered confidence and calm. Please stay for the Q&A or email me at any time if you need more reassurance or any assistance as timetabling season ramps up. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon.